Good day everyone. To our research instructor, Mrs. Monina Babaran. To our research advisor, Mrs. Mary Joy Inso. And to our research panelists, Mr. Bonifacio Amper, Mrs. Jihan Comeros, and Mr. Imardi Bayricho. Let me present our research entitled Formulation and Development of Apple or Malus domestica jam with squash or cucurbita maxima. By the way, I am Julian V. Azoro, the Group 2 facilitator. Abstract. Jam is a thick mixture of fruit, pectin, and sugar that is boiled gently but quickly until the fruit is soft and has an organic shape. Yet, it is still thick enough that it spread and can form easily. Apple, a popular fruit containing antioxidants, vitamins, dietary fiber, and a range of other nutrients. Squash was utilized as potential raw ingredients in the production of apple jam to enhance its nutritional and commercial value. This experimental method of research was used in conducting the study in all of the recipes by employing the laboratory techniques and procedure using 10 teachers and 40 students as our panelists. As for the preparation of apple jam mixed with squash, both ingredients were subjected to washing, boiling, steaming, and mixing. The entire cooking process of apple jam mixed with squash was done by means of boiling method. The study aimed to determine the effects of mashed squash on the acceptability of apple jam mixed with squash using descriptive and preference testing at Cebu Technological University, Carmen Campus during the first semester of the academic year 2020 to 2021 as basis for an enhanced recipe. Based on the results of the sensory analysis of the apple jam with squash, the most preferred jam was with the use of 750 grams amount of mashed squash and had moderately golden yellow color, moderate fruit flavor, and very pleasant odor for the descriptive test. The panelists selected the same sample for the preference test and rated like moderately in color, flavor, odor, appearance, and taste. Hence, mashed squash can affect the color, flavor, odor, appearance, and taste of the most preferred apple jam mixed with squash. Thus, the enhanced recipe is recommended. Introduction. Rationale of the study. As part of a Filipino culture, we have grown up to be a bread eater, and of course, with those delicious bread spreadables just like chocolates, peanut butter, mayonnaise, cheese, fruit jams, etc. When someone think of a plain bread, obviously, they think something that makes their bread tastier and fancier from what it is. As we think of this, it brought us so much gladness and excitement. The eagerness of oneself to eat and munch those creamy, sweet or salty, sour bread spreadable sounds more exciting than usual eating a plain bread. If we were to choose one of those spreadable that has mentioned, we will choose the jam because it is one of the healthiest and organic option. Jam is a thick mixture of fruit, pectin, and sugar that is boiled gently but quickly until the fruit is soft and has an organic shape. Jam also is a semi-solid food made from not less than 45% fruit and 55% sugar. The substrate is concentrated to above 65% or above soluble solid. Flavoring and coloring agents are added to overcome the deficiencies that occur in the fruit itself. Standard formulations have been developed according to the end use. Consumer preferences, market demand, food loss, buyer's specification, and economic utilization of inputs required. Almost everyone thinks that jam is only for fruits, right? In this research, we have thought of a unique idea that to mix a fruit and vegetable into one. We have already heard about vegetable/fruit smoothies that we can bought everywhere. But have you heard about the fruit and vegetable has been mixed to make spreadable? Sounds weird. As we embrace this new normal, let us embrace the uniqueness of this spreadable too. Come to think, an apple and squash to jam or a bread spreadable. Sounds unappetizing, but it's actually good and it contains a lot of benefits as well. Apples are a popular fruit containing antioxidants, vitamins, dietary fiber rather, and a range of other nutrients. Due to their varied nutrient content, they may help prevent several health conditions. Apple also provide a range of health benefits. Apples are rich in fiber, vitamins, and minerals, all of which benefit health. Squash, yellow varieties of squash provide numerous health benefits. The vegetable is high in vitamins A, B6, and C, folate, magnesium, fiber, riboflavin, phosphorus, and potassium. That's a serious nutritional power-packed vegetable. Apple and squash are a good combination to try on. It may sound very odd, but as you will try this spreadable, I bet you will crave for more. Our aim of this study is to evaluate a suitable combination of an apple and squash together, and to make the younger generation realize that fruit and vegetable has a good taste, and considering the fact of all healthy benefits it carries as well. This research stands the importance of fruits and vegetables not just for the kids, but for all the ages as well that feels disgusted when eating or drinking a fruit or a vegetable. Thus, this study is conducted to find out how acceptable the intermixing of vegetable and fruit into jam compared to a standard jam only.
I am Narcisa A. Aris and I'm going to present the theoretical background. This study anchored of how acceptable the apple squash jam and their nutritional value. The squash or Cucurbita maxima is also known as summer squash. Yellow varieties of squash provide numerous health benefits. The vegetable is high in vitamins A, B6 and C, folate, magnesium, fiber, riboflavin, phosphorus, and potassium. Yellow squash is also rich in manganese. This mineral helps to boost bone strength and helps the body's ability to process fats and carbohydrates. Squash is a kind of vegetable that is commonly raised throughout the year in abundance. Squash pulp is used as poultice for carbuncles, boils, and ulcers. For venomous insect bites, the fruit stalk in contact with ripe gourd is cut, dried and made into a paste and applied to venomous insect bites, especially centipedes. The fresh seeds are used as anti-helminticides, are eaten fresh to expel worms from the stomach. This highly economical, highly nutritious, and pleasantly tasting fruit or vegetable is incredibly versatile, and we use it in soups, baked with brown sugar, fried in tempura butter, in coconut milk-based dishes, or in pinakbit, a famous Filipino viand. The apple or Malus domestica. The apple is a crunchy, bright-colored fruit, one of the most popular in the whole wide world. It contains antioxidants, vitamins, dietary fiber, and a range of other nutrients. Due to their varied nutrient content, they may help prevent several health conditions. Apples came in a variety of shapes, colors, and flavors and provide a range of nutrients that can benefit many different aspects of a person's health. The fiber can slow digestion, so you feel fuller after eating. This can keep you from overeating. Eating fiber-rich foods helps control symptoms and lessens the effect of acid reflux. An apple's fiber can also help with diarrhea and constipation. Some studies shows that the plant chemicals and the fiber of an apple peel protect against blood vessels and health damage. They also can help lower your cholesterol, and they might protect your cell's DNA from something called oxidative damage, which is one of the things that can lead to cancer. The product of the apple jam. As explained in the introductory section, apple jam is a gelled, ready-to-eat product. It may be used as a spread for bread, also as filling for other pastries and bakery products. When packed in the normal glass containers, the product should have a shelf life of about 4 months prior to opening. It has a total soluble solid contents of about 66%, or between 3.5 and 3.8, and water activity of 0.76 to 0.78. After opening, the product ideally should be refrigerated at 5 degrees Celsius, though this may not be necessary. It is, however, important that the product is tightly closed at all times. Method of apple jam pectin extraction. Pulp extraction. Fruit pulp was extracted with the help of grinder or juicer by adding apple pieces in pulp. Preparation of jam. Different ratios of artificial sweetness were calculated for jam preparation to the formula and procedure. The jam was prepared in open stainless steel kettles. Select 5 large apples. The greener ones have more pectin, so they will be more desirable. Peel the apples and remove the core. Remove seeds from core and discard seeds. Collect the peel and seedless core in a pot. Add 3 cups of water and bring to boil. Once boiling, lower temperature and let simmer for 40 minutes. Remove from stove and strain through a fine strainer. Sensory evaluation. Selected samples of jam prepared from artificial sweeteners were evaluated organoleptically for color, flavor, odor, taste, appearance, and overall acceptability by the method. Samples were presented to expert teachers of CTU Carmen Campus.
My name is Hannah Jency Branzuela, and I will present the statistical analysis, statement of the problem, statement of null hypothesis, and significance of the study. In statistical analysis, quality is often evaluated by the senses based on the attributes of the apple jam with bold masked squash such as color, flavor, odor, taste, appearance, and overall acceptability. The methods that can be used for sensory testing may be classified into descriptive and preference tests. All the data were analyzed statistically using the formula of weighted mean. In the statement of the problem, the main aim of sensory analysis test study is on the feasibility upon making the apple squash jam as a bread spreadable through descriptive and sensory analysis as perceived by the respondents. Specifically, the study sought to answer the following questions. First, what is the most acceptable formulation and addition of squash in the production of apple jam? Second, how acceptable is the production of apple with squash jam using descriptive sensory analysis as perceived by the respondents in terms of the following sensory attributes. First, color. Second, flavor. Third, odor. Fourth, texture. And the last is general acceptability. In third question, what is the respondent's acceptability formulation of the apple jam mixed with squash? And the fourth is, based on the findings, what enhanced formulated recipe can be proposed? In statement of null hypothesis, there is no significant mean difference that has found to the formulated apple jam with squash as to color, flavor, odor, taste, and appearance. In significance of the study, the result of this study is significant to the different sectors: food, technology, and home economics teacher. This study would open their minds to the wide and vast areas of technology that they can unravel or search to find and discover new things. Bachelor in Technology and Livelihood Education, major in Home Economics student. The study will serve as a training ground for it will help them enhance creativity and innovation skills. Also, this would enable them to appreciate the use of apple and squash as a jam. Small-scale entrepreneurs. The study would help them to make another recipe and allowing them to have more income. Consumers. They are the direct beneficiaries who could enjoy the products as snack item either for teenagers. And the last is future researchers. Study gives them knowledge or idea on how to conduct research. It will serve as basis on conducting related research studies.
I am Rena Mayer Bergali and I will present our research methodology. So in order to gather information to support our study, we researchers use different methods and techniques to find out whether innovation in the process of apple jam with squash could be possible. The methods include 4 treatments or formulation, which is referred to as F0, the control or standardized formulation, F1 with 500 grams, F2 with 750 grams, and F3 with 1000 grams concentrations of mashed squash. This method was used in order to find out which of the 4 formulations can produce an acceptable quality in terms of color, flavor, odor, texture, and general acceptability. In our study, it involves the basic recipe in preparing apple jam with the inclusion of varying amount of mashed squash. Thus, the sensory properties were determined through product testing. After the respondents tested the product using criteria for judging, which bears the direction of the study, the process had followed. The process involves product formulation for consumer evaluation using the 5-point hedonic scorecards as an instrument of data collection. This questionnaire was formulated and subjected to trials before being administered for the actual sensory scorecard. The responses in the accomplishment questionnaires were tallied and tabulated. Data obtained was statistically treated using weighted mean and Kramer's rank sum test. The systematic sequence of the study was shown in Figure 1 on the next page, which gave the flow of the study. It employed the systems model showing the input, process, and output of the study. Research environment is a target area that you will conduct your research. Since the squash is rare in an urban area, we decided to conduct our research in rural area, specifically in Sugod, Cebu. We researchers determined the acceptability of the apple squash jam, which is limited to individuals who will try the jam in the chosen areas. The researchers choose the squash vegetable as an ingredient because it has a lot of health benefits to human body, which will be helpful to maintain a healthy body. So we have here the locale of the study, which shows the distance between Cebu Technological University Carmen campus to the municipality of Sugut. It has 35.8 kilometers in distance, and if we travel by bus, we have here 56 minutes in time.
I am Angelica Colunia, and the part of the research that I will be discuss is about research respondents. Well, in our research, we have 50 numbers of respondents, and 40 of them were students from Sugod, Cebu, and 10 of them were from faculty of CTU Carmen. And before they will be selected, orientation was administered and their personal qualifications and interests will be determined so that potential qualification judges can be selected. They will be rated the apple with varying amounts of mass squash-based preference testing. And the distribution of the same panelists during the sensory evaluation of the product for the whole duration of the study can be seen in Table 1. And the evaluators will be given enough time to do the scorecard and evaluation to ensure reliable results. The sensory panelists will evaluate the product using the prepared sensory score sheet provided by the teachers. The next part is the research instrument. The researchers formulate research made tests as an instrument for gathering the data. It consists of questions that will feed back the finished results of intermixing the squash and apple to a jam in their own preferences. The goal of the test is to measure and interpret the sensory analysis of the respondents. The respondents will be given a small jar of jam in order for them to proceed. Then, the purpose of this instrument is to find out how acceptability of the squash and apple jam in terms of color, flavor, odor, taste, and appearance, which will be seen in this picture. Formulation 0 is originally the apple jam. The formulation 1 is consist of 500 grams squash mixed with the original apple jam. The formulation 2 with 750 grams of squash, and formulation 3 with 1000 grams of squash. And in preference test score sheet, they are requested to rate the formulated apple jam with squash according to different attributes described below. They will choose the following samples where they were preferred most in terms of color, flavor, odor, appearance, taste, and overall acceptability. And also comments and suggestions, recommendations will accepted. Our scorecard in descriptive test for formulation of apple jam with squash are presented. The respondents were to evaluate these coded samples based on the given descriptions. They will check the appropriate description of each attribute in Formulation 1, Formulation 2, and 3 in terms of
color, flavor, odor or aroma, taste, appearance, and also comments and suggestions are welcome. On the next part, our research method. The researcher secured an approval from the campus director for the permission to conduct the study in the said location. Likewise, permission was sought from campus director to allow the 10 teachers and 40 students to serve as a panel of evaluators. Processing of formulation and development of squash, cucurbita maxima, and apple malus domestica jam. Apple and squash was purchased from a local market, where there are 4 processes in making the jam, which are wash, boil, steam, and mixing. Wash the ingredients by the use of flowing water. Then boil, mix the main ingredients in a bowl, heat fire and bring to boil. Steam for 20 to 30 minutes. Mix and put the other ingredient.
I am Jinrose Enriquez and I will present the experimental process of our research. The table 2 showed the proportion of ingredients in making the apple jam with mashed squash. It is clearly stated that the amount of all the ingredients is all the same on the aforementioned. On the procedure, first, wash the squash and apple by the use of flowing water. Second, peel the skin of the squash and apple by using a peeler. Steps in making the apple jam with mashed squash. First, let the squash boil for about 15 minutes. Second, steam the apple good for 20 to 25 minutes with a medium fire. Third, mix all ingredients in a pan and mix thoroughly. Put 750 grams of white sugar and 20 grams of citrus juice. Tip and note if the jam is well cooked. You will get a spoon, scrape the jam, and once it will form, it means that your jam has been well cooked. If the jam is still in water consistency continue to cook and mix with a low heat fire. Procedures.
On this table, the table 2 shows the ratio of ingredients in the preparation of apple and squash jam. For the procedures, using the above-mentioned formulations, the different recipes were prepared by slicing the apples into 4 parts and placed to a steamer with a low heat fire. After steaming of apples, grate the apple to become soft, mix the apple with sugar and lemon or citrus juice in a low heat fire. Mix thoroughly to avoid lumps. For the formulated recipes, prepare the boiled mashed squash and add how many grams with a standard apple jam. Mix thoroughly both formulation in a medium heat fire. For the figure 4, it shows that the preparation of formulation 1 with 500 grams amount of squash. For the figure 5, it shows the preparation of formulation 2 with 750 grams amount of squash. And for the figure 6, the preparation of formulation 3 with 1000 grams amount of squash. For the tools, materials used in preparation of apple squash jam. In the preparation of apple and squash jam, the following tools or materials were used. First is the measuring cup, second, measuring spoon, third, tablespoons, fourth, knife, fifth, chopping board, sixth, hairnet, apron, peeler, mixing bowl, strainer, colander, hand gloves, and grater.
My name is Glizel T. Ilogen. I will represent the acceptability determination. The 5 recipes of apple jam with squash were subjected to sensory scorecard by the 10 expert panelists and 40 consumer panelists for its preference or acceptability. The quality attributes of jam considered were described following the method by Disrovers, 1978. This method specifies that, first, the color for boiled product is pleasingly orange. Second, the odor is pleasing and appetizing. Third, the taste is one with extremely recognizable apple jam with squash. And the fourth, the texture is characterized by thickness or smoothness. In sensory evaluation, the apple jam with varying concentration of boiled mashed squash was subjected to sensory evaluation based on descriptive test and preference test by 10 expert panelists and 40 students panelists. In data gathering, in this study, the data was taken from the sensory evaluation responses both in descriptive and preference testing as to its color, flavor, odor, texture, and general acceptability with varying amount of smash, squash. Perceptions of descriptive qualities of jam. Experimental samples of jam with varying concentration of mashed squash were evaluated for 3 trials to determine the mean significant difference of the 4 samples using 10 expert panelists of the descriptive test and 40 students panelists for the preference test. Descriptive test. There are 10 experts panelists describe and analyze the properties of the product. Criteria for product properties will be based on the descriptive evaluation of color, flavor, odor, and texture of sample product. Sample score sheet will be shown in Appendix B. Preference test. The experimental samples of jam with varying amount of mashed squash were subjected to testing the 40 consumer panelists. The consumer panelists as respondents who describe the color, flavor, odor, texture, and general acceptability of the jam and will be rated based on the score sheet given in Appendix C. Statistical treatment. The data gathered was treated statistically using the weighted mean and the Cramer's rank sum test. To interpret the perceptions of the respondents under descriptive test results, the following non-parametric scale will be used as shown in Table 3. As you see in Table 3, the non-parametric scale used for the descriptive test scores ranges for apple squash jam. In color, the color environment in which the product is presented may affect one's reaction to either accept or reject it. Color perceived by man depends on the nature of the material, the background illumination, spectral composition of light source, and the sensitivity of a human eye. Object being evaluated may either be opaque, transparent, or translucent, in which case light may be absorbed, reflected, or transmitted, respectively. In physical terms, items with their characteristic composition may also possess gloss, glitter, and sheen. Each of these would affect evaluation under given condition. In flavor, many sensations commonly attributed to taste are in fact flavor, which is combination taste and odor. And the taste, another product attribute which can be both as appearance and touch factor is texture. Being associated with touch, texture is concerned with resistance to force just like viscosity and consistency. The difference lies in the fact that texture is referred to solid objects, and so resistance implies compression or a cut or shear appearance. By Desrosiers, 1978. To interpret the perception of the respondents or panelists on the preference test result, The following non-parametric scale was used in Table 3. In Table 4, the non-parametric scale used for the preference test scores ranges for apple squash jam. From the color, the golden yellow is 4.21 to 5. Moderately golden yellow, 3.41 to 4.20. In medium yellow, 2.61 to 3.40. In low high yellow, 1.81 to 2.60. In low light yellow, 1 to 1.80. In flavor, slight fruit, 4.21 to 5. Moderate fruit, 3.41 to 4.20. Strong fruit, 2.61 to 3.40. Very strong fruit, 1.81 to 2.60. Extremely strong fruit, 1 to 1.80. In odor, extremely pleasant is 4.21 to 5. Very pleasant, 3.41 to 4.20. Moderately pleasant, 2.61 to 3.40. Slightly pleasant, 1.81 to 2.60. Not pleasant, 1 to 1.80. In taste, extremely sweet, 4.21 to 5. Very sweet, 3.41 to 4.20. Moderately sweet, 2.61 to 3.40. Slightly sweet, 1.81 to 2.60. And bland, 1 to 1.80. The lastly, the appearance. Extremely fine, 4.21 to 5. Very fine, 3.41 to 4.20. Moderately fine, 2.61 to 3.40. Slightly fine, 1.81 to 2.60. And the rough, 1 to 1.80. In Table 5, the average mean range based on the 5 hedonic scales. Numerical range from 1 to 1.80 is dislike very much, 1.81 to 2.60, dislike moderately, 2.61 to 3.40, neither like nor dislike, 3.41 to 4.20, very moderately, 4.21 to 5, like very much.
My name is Marites Nuneza. I'm going to present the Chapter 2, Formulation, Analysis, and Interpretation of Data. This chapter represented the findings of the study, the analysis and interpretation of data. The study determines the acceptability of apple jam with formulation of squash. Formulations prepared based on a standard apple jam with a squash.
As you can see in Table 6,
It shows the proportion of ingredients used in making the recipe of apple jam squash, such as formulation 0 with the original recipe of apple jam, formulation 1 with 500 grams, formulation 2 with 750 grams, and formulation 3 with 1000 grams amount of boiled mashed squash. It is evident that the amount of all other ingredients is the same on the aforementioned except the variable or treatment of the study, which is apple jam. While Table 6, as you can see, presented the formulation of the 4 recipes that were used in the study. Evidently, the table showed the 4 treatment recipes that were formulated in the course of the study with varying amounts of squash that were all being added with the constant volume sugar, calamansi juice, and apple by using the standard recipe of apple jam, wherein could be pursued the different treatment recipes formulations, as indicated as the respective ingredients the procedure, and the composition of the finished product. The presentation reflected the formulation prepared with boiled mashed squash concentration that was added based on an apple jam recipe. The findings implies that the study was basically objective, as all the replications were basically having the same standards. Ingredients. The ingredients and the procedure of the control formulation are FO or F0, and those of the other treatment recipes could be observed herein. The ingredients were as follows: 1,000 grams of apple, 750 grams of sugar, 20 grams of calamansi juice. For the other treatment formulations, as the F1 or formulation 1, F2, F3, the ingredients and the procedures respectively follow the same with the control sample, with only difference as the addition of 500 gram, 750 gram, and 1,000 gram of boiled mashed squash. The presentation implies that the production in a commercial scale of apple jam with boiled mashed squash is valuable in the community as raw materials are found in it. Descriptive and preferences sensory qualities of apple squash jam. The formulated apple jam with varying formulation of boiled or mashed squash were subjected to sensory evaluation based on descriptive and preference tests using 10 expert finalists and 40 students. Sensory assessment results. The newly prepared apple jam with varying amounts of formulated boiled mashed squash were assessed by the 10 expert panelists, 40 students for both the descriptive and preference tests respectively. Descriptive test results. The formulated apple squash jam were subjected to descriptive testing on color, on flavor, the odor, texture, appearance, using the 5-point parametric scales as reflected in Table 6. So as you can see in Table 7, as revealed, could be discerned. The descriptive rating evaluations on the three formulations are related by the identified expert finalists revealed that the quantitative mean score of the different treatment recipes were as follows. So, formulations 3 or F3 have 3.36 and F2 got 3.54. The F1 get 3.44 with the corresponding verbal descriptions of moderate golden yellow in treatment 1 and 2, while treatment 3 has a verbal descriptive of medium low yellow. This implied that boiled mashed squash can affect the color of apple jam that is from light yellow to medium low yellow. Flavor. As shown in Table 7, apple jam with 500 gram of boiled mashed squash has a main score of 38.82, and the apple jam with 750 gram of boiled mashed squash with a main score of 3.46, having the same verbal description of moderate fruit, while the apple jam with 1,000 gram of boiled mashed squash had a main score of 3.36 with a verbal description of slight fruit. This implied that the greater amount of boiled or mashed squash will affect the apple jam. In terms of odor, as shown in Table 7, it revealed that The quantitative mean score of the F1, F2, and F3 were 3.48 or 3.56 and 3.54 respectively, with a verbal description of very pleasant. This means that the odor can be effective upon in the incorporation of boiled mashed squash to the apple jam. While in taste, as revealed in Table 7, as to the taste attribute of boiled mashed squash, the quantitative mean score of the F1, F2, and F3 were 2 or 4.12, 3.86, and 3.8 respectively, with very sweet for F1, F2, and F3. This means that the taste can be affected upon the incorporation of boiled mashed squash to the apple jam. In appearance, as revealed in Table 7, as could be discerned and descriptive relating evaluation on the three formulation as rated by the identified expert finalist revealed that the quantitative mean scores of the different treatment recipes were as follows. F3 got 3.56, F2 got 3.58, F1 got 3.4, with the corresponding verbal description of moderate fine in treatment 1, while treatment 2 and 3 has a verbal description of very fine. This implied that boiled mashed squash can affect the appearance of apple jam that is from moderately fine to very fine. Presence test results. The presence test required analytical expertise of the experienced panelists, who were composed of the 10 expert finalists and 40 students. The results, as evaluated by the identified 10 expert finalists and 40 students, used the 5 hedonic scale as revealed in Table 8.
Hello everyone, I am Mary Joy B. Pipito and I'm going to present Table 8, which is Summary and Preference Test Results on the sensory attributes of the different treatment recipes of apple jam with varying concentration of mashed squash. So as you can see in the table, there are different kinds of formulation and their attributes. So let's begin with the color. As to the color attribute of the finished product, Table 8 revealed the hedonic rating evaluation of the 4 treatment formulation as critiqued by panelists, with the quantitative mean scores and the respective preference ratings of F0, 3.6 likely moderate, F1, 3.84 likely moderate, F2, which is 3.54 and likely moderate, and last is F3, 3.66 likely moderate. The findings imply that the apple jam with 500 grams of boiled mashed squash has the highest color preference rating, which is likely moderate among the rest of the samples, as perceived by the panelists. This implied that the incorporation of boiled mashed squash in apple jam enhanced the color of the product. Flavor. As to the flavor attribute, Table 8 revealed the preference rating evaluations of the 4 treatment formulation as with the quantitative mean scores and the respective preference ratings. F0 is 3.26, neither like nor dislike. F1, 3.96, like moderately. F2, 3.46, which is like moderately, and F3 3.38, neither like nor dislike. The findings implied that apple jam is enhanced by boiled mashed squash. Thus, boiled mashed squash can be incorporated in the preparation of the apple jam. Next is other. Table 8 revealed that the preference rating evaluations of the 4 treatment formulation as rated by the 10 expert panelists and 40 students, with the quantitative mean scores and the prospective preference ratings of F0 is 4.18, like moderately, F1 3.58, like moderately, F2 3.62, like moderately, and F3 3.44, like moderately. This implied that the incorporation of boiled mashed squash enhanced the odor of the product of apple jam. Appearance. As revealed in Table 8, the preference rating evaluations of 4 treatment formulations as critiqued by the quantitative mean scores and respective preference ratings of F0 is 3.85, like moderately, F1 3.74, like moderately, F2 3.84, like moderately, and F3 3.68, like moderately. The findings imply that the incorporation of non-incorporation of boiled mashed squash in the apple jam both give an acceptable rating of neither like nor dislike. As to the texture attribute, though, its incorporation tends to increase the numerical degree of acceptability. Next is taste. As revealed in Table 8, the preference rating evaluations of 4 treatment formulation as critiqued by quantitative mean scores and respective preference ratings of F0 4.12, like moderately, F1 3.48, neutral, F2 3.96, like moderately, and F3 3.9, like moderately. The findings imply that the apple jam with no boiled mashed squash has highest taste preference rating, which is likely moderately among the rest of the samples as perceived by the panelists. Overall acceptability. Summarizing the data as to the overall acceptability, the table finally presented the preference rating evaluations on the 4 treatment formulations as critiqued by 10 expert panelists and 40 students. As revealed in Table 8, the preference rating evaluations of 4 treatment formulations as critiqued by quantitative mean scores and the respective preference ratings of F0 is 4.14, like moderately, F1 3.64, like moderately, F2 3.78, like moderately, F3 3.2, neither like nor dislike. The findings imply that the apple jam with no boiled mashed squash, which is F0, has the highest preference of overall acceptability rating, which is like moderately among the rest of the samples, as perceived by the panelists. Based on the results as shown in Table 8, F0 get the highest mean score of 3.85, which rank as number 1, a recipe that contains no mashed squash, by F1 with 3.70 and has 500 grams of mashed squash, F2 with 3.7 and has 750 grams of mashed squash. And lastly, F3 with 3.54 and has 1000 grams of mashed squash. We came up to this result by using Kramer's rank sum test.
I am Catherine Andrade Torrejano, and I will discuss the economic significance in the preparation of apple squash jam. The cost of production of a jam product can be determined by getting the total cost of all ingredients actually used in the formulation as shown in Table 9. Total cost is divided by the number of serving portions produced, and the result is the cost per serving portion. Cost per portion is then multiplied by the markup factor, or 100, divided by the percent of food cost level of operation to determine the selling price per serving portion of the food. In the production of 50 apple squash jam, the total cost of all ingredients, squash, apple and sugar, citrus or lemon, as purchased is 687 pesos. However, the total cost of ingredients as consumed is only 160 pesos. 50 apple squash jam is derived as 160 pesos divided by 50 equals 3 pesos and 20 centavos. This would result to 1 peso and 9 centavos as expected net gain or profit or portion. Most of the products being purchased were very inexpensive. It can be a feasible product since the raw material and other ingredients used were also affordable. Theoretically, the expected profit can be a feasible amount in the sustenance of one's business if anyone wants to venture on apple squash jam on the market. So, our estimated cost of formulation and development of apple jam with squash in the market. Ingredients: squash, apple, sugar, citrus, lemon. As per consumed, weight, volume, or count of squash is 2.4 kilogram that cost 80 pesos per kilo. 16 pieces of apple that cost 15 pesos each. 3 kilogram sugar that cost 45 pesos per kilo. 6 pieces of citrus or lemon that cost 20 pesos each. Total of consumed 160 pesos. As purchased, the total price of squash 2.4 kilogram was 192 pesos. 16 pieces of apple was 240 pesos. 3 kilogram sugar was 135 pesos, and citrus or lemon 6 pieces was 120 pesos, and the total is 687 pesos. Price per portion is 4 pesos and 29 centavos. So the formulation is apple squash jam. Number of portions is 50. Cost or portion is 3 pesos and 20 centavos. Selling price portion is 4 pesos and 29 centavos. Then the net profit is 1 peso and 9 centavos. Chapter 3. Summary of findings, conclusion, and recommendations. This chapter presented the summary of findings, conclusion, and recommendation based on the data and some other valuable informations that were generated through the study. Summary. This study determined the formulation and development of apple Malus domestica jam with squash Cucurbita maxima as basis for an enhanced recipe based on sensory qualities using descriptive and preference testing. The sensory properties of the experimental samples using mashed squash as ingredients are tested on the standard recipe of apple jam. It is sought to answer the following questions. Number 1. What is the most acceptable formulation and addition of squash in the production of apple jam? Number 2. How acceptable is the production of apple with squash jam using descriptive sensory analysis as perceived by the respondents in terms of the following sensory attributes? 2.1 Color, 2.2 flavor, 2.3 odor, 2.4 texture, and 2.5 general acceptability. 3. What is the respondent's acceptability formulation of apple jam mixed with squash? 4. Based on the findings, what enhanced formulated recipe can be proposed? The study determined the effects of mashed squash on the acceptability of the apple jam by using the descriptive and preference test at the CTU Carmen campus, Poblacion Carmen, Cebu during the first semester of the academic 2021-2022 as basis for an improved recipe. The study sought to answer questions pertinent to the formulation that could be prepared based on the standard jam by using the following treatments as FO, the control or standard formulation, F1 with 500 gram mashed squash, F2 with 750 gram mashed squash, and F3 with 1000 grams concentration of mashed squash. The extent of the acceptability of the jam with above mentioned concentrations based on sensory evaluation and the following attributes as to color, flavor, odor, and texture. The significant mean difference on the sensory evaluations on the aforementioned attributes as based on the perceptions of the panelists, the approximate composition of the most preferred jam. The experimental method of research was used in conducting the study in all of the recipes. The formulation study was divided into 4 treatments. A preliminary testing was done to the apple jam with squash in order to assess the color, flavor, odor, and texture of the product, with the consensus of the majority of the identified panelists. Specific color, moderately golden yellow, flavor, moderate fruit, odor, very pleasant, taste, very sweet, and appearance, very fine. Next is the findings. Based on the result of the sensory analysis of the standard apple jam with mashed squash, the data gathered from the research revealed findings as herein indicated. The formulations were prepared on a standard apple jam recipe by using 1000 grams of apples, 750 grams of sugar, and 20 grams of calamansi juice. On the preference test, the results as evaluated by the identified 10 expert panelists and 40 students that used the 5 hedonic scale could be summarily stated. The findings imply that the apple jam with no boiled mashed squash, which is FO, has the highest preference of overall acceptability rating, which is like moderately among the rest of the samples, as perceived by the panelists. Next is the conclusion. Based on the findings of the study, it is concluded that the most preferred recipe is FO with 1000 grams of apple with no mashed squash, and was rated 4.4 as like moderately in all of its attributes as the color, flavor, odor, appearance, and taste.